I took off my glasses because I can see you glowing without them.
No. Yeah. You put on the glasses, it removes the glow.
That's right. Another invention of man that hinders our ability to perceive.
Yeah, I agree. I've heard interesting stories, like, you know, my mom's been married 4 times. So her second husband, my first stepdad,
Landon's father, right?
Yeah, Landon's father.
Yeah.
We would go to Maine to see those grandparents, Meme and Pepe. And Pepe, I remember, I mean, this was when I was, you know, before middle school. Old man living in Maine, didn't wear glasses. But many years before, he was told to wear glasses, like put them on. I think he tried them and they gave him headaches and he said, fuck this. And he just stopped wearing them and his vision got better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. His vision fixed.
Like, imagine if you're like a doctor, right? And you're taught all this stuff about, like, okay, like in Western medicine, this is how we treat whatever cancer, right? And you tell someone, okay, you got to take these treatments or else, you know, these are your percentage chances of living, right? Mm-hmm. And then the person goes off and doesn't do what the doctor says, but then does whatever, some other things. Comes back and is like, hey, I'm still alive. They don't care about that. No one's writing that shit down.
Yeah.
Are we on, by the way? Is this? Are we going?
Yeah. So, welcome to the Creativity Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Cameron Smith. Today, my guest is my good friend, Michael Phipps. We got a wild one for you today. Obviously, I don't know what we're going to say, but I guarantee it's going to be wild. And as usual, before we get into it, I got an ad I got to read. This episode of the Creativity Theory Podcast is brought to you by Quaker Oats, the only breakfast that will prevent AIDS. Just one bowl of our 100% organic, gluten-free, and vegan oatmeal is packed with enough nutrition to allow you to behave however you want for the rest of your life and never get AIDS. We're so certain this is the case that if you've ever had as much as a nibble or one single oat, and you also have AIDS, go ahead and sue us. Quaker Oats. Fuck a butt, share a needle, whatever you want to do.
If AIDS is even a virus.
Yeah, I don't know what it technically is.
You know, I think that a lot of people don't really know what any of it is.
Like what any diseases are? You want to just go ahead and go straight into that?
Yeah, why not? Right?
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, you brought it up, right? In the 80s, mm-hmm. when the HIV epidemic hit the public consciousness, okay, the way they were diagnosing whether a person had the HIV. So my understanding is like the HIV is the virus and the AIDS is the illness or disease that results from having the virus, right? So we're told, right? The guy who invented, they use PCR tests to diagnose HIV patients, the same test that they were using to diagnose COVID-19 patients. And the person who invented the PCR test, his name's Carrie Mullis. He's no longer physical, but there are like videos of him, not on YouTube, but on like BitChute or like Odyssey, where he's talking about how there's no possible way you could diagnose such a virus using the PCR test, and that the process that he sort of discovered or first utilized, he himself talks about the weaknesses of it. And it was Anthony Fauci, who was the head of the NIH at the time, that ended up putting together like the various medicines and things that were used to treat the viruses, the people that had the viruses at the time. I'm not suggesting that there isn't an illness or disease, but like staying on the topic of HIV, like something that Carrie Mullis says it's quite interesting to me is that no one has ever proven that the HIV virus causes AIDS.
Got it.
There's no scientific documentation. And there's videos of him talking about how he went around to everybody. He was trying to write a grant, and he went around to everybody in the field to try to source a reference for this. And he couldn't come up with one. Now, I'm going to shift a little bit to my own viewpoints, because I believe that what we call viruses are actually our cells attempting to clean themselves and shed material from them. So, like, there's a term called extracellular vesicle, which is a term used to describe a like a packet of genetic material wrapped inside of a lipid with a protein outer signal that was discovered in the 80s, that under the umbrella of looking at it as an extracellular vesicle, it's the cell just shedding and removing stuff that is not needed from the cell itself.
Okay.
And just logically, it would make sense that if things are going in, things also have to come out. Like if you have plumbing, there's water that goes in, and then there's water that goes out, right? So, yeah, I believe that like what we call a virus is actually our body attempting to clean itself, which is not what we're taught in school, and unfortunately goes totally against the paradigm of capitalism in Western medicine. But, you know, if you believe in or are interested in accessing the world around us from a spiritual perspective, I find it's more useful to look at the physical things that happen as effects rather than causes.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does, and I think that falls in line a little bit with a lot. Like, I think I agree with you. I think that way too. I think you are more immersed in that world and way of seeing the world than I am. I think I'm probably have a maybe more elementary grasp on that, but I definitely do see the metaphysical territory of like mind and emotion to be more the domain of where things are, and that, you know, physical reality is like a lot of the things that, like, I think you've heard enough of these podcasts. You heard me talking to Carly, where I was talking about like a lot of the mental health issues we have. They're not, chemical imbalances are not the reason we have the mental health issues. We have the mental health issues, and that's why there's a chemical imbalance. The chemical imbalance is the physical manifestation of the metaphysical phenomenon.
100%.
Yes. And something interesting, I know you've probably also heard me bring up the Ian McGilchrist guy, the left and right hemisphere brain. So he has that book, The Master and His Emissary, but the more recent one he's written is called The Matter with Things. And he uses that left and right hemisphere to talk about our perception of all this stuff, and then he goes out to tackle things like consciousness and the material world and energy and that kind of thing. And I really like his view of what consciousness is in the relationship with the material reality. He sees both material and consciousness, both the physical and metaphysical, as the same thing, but it's like water and ice. Yeah. The material is just the ice version of the metaphysical. Okay. Yeah. It's a spectrum.
I'm familiar with some of that line of thinking. Can we take a little bit of an intellectual walk to explore some of this stuff?
Sure.
Okay. So I heard a very compelling presentation recently from a doctor who claims that cells, as we currently know them and are taught them, is not accurate. The most magnified view that we have available to us in Western society of a cell or cellular activity is from using a scanning electron microscope. And essentially the way that you would look at a biological sample, so any kind of fluid or tissue under a scanning electron microscope, is you would take your sample, you would blend it together, you would then filter it, you would then dye it with an abrasive chemical, and then you would dehydrate it, and then you're able to look at it under the scanning electron microscope. I believe this guy's name was Dr. Kaufman, Andrew Kaufman. So if anyone wants to
the doctor was Andy Kaufman?
Yeah, seriously. If anyone wants to look this up.
Seems like someone could be trolling on the internet.
But he makes the strong argument that this process actually dehydrates and destroys the cell and creates what he calls an artifact. So, in other words, there is no endoplasmic reticulum. There are no Golgi bodies. All that stuff is just the result of gases coming out of the dehydrated cytoplasm, and it's just literally the cell crushing in on itself and then like re-expanding. If you look at cells under a light microscope, excuse me, what you see is a nucleus, a cell membrane to some sort of border or divide amongst other cells, and you see small dots within the cell itself all throughout that we are told is a mitochondria. Okay, and then we can deduce that there's cytoplasm, right? What I'm suggesting, or what this guy has presented, and what feels right to me, and what I'm suggesting here today, is that the cytoplasm is actually structured water within our cells that acts as a like a vibratory receptacle that receives a signal. I believe the nucleus receives the signal from around us or whatever frequency that it's tuned into. And then there's some kind of crystallization or alchemical process where that energy goes through the structured water, and then maybe the mitochondria turn it into usable energy or something like that. But I think that we're uncomfortable admitting that we don't know. So we develop tests and things and using fancy instruments, and then we try to convince ourselves that this is this and this is that, even though that we really don't know. You know, how can you say an endoplasmic reticulum really does anything if no one's ever seen it actually do the thing? We're just all repeating everyone's theories. And then the worst part about all this is that, and I experienced this like when I went to university, you see that there are professors and that base their whole careers off of like a certain field of study. The incentive for them is to get published, to bring money and notoriety to university. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if we're constantly looking to learn and grow and further better understand what this place is and who we are and how best to interact with it, we're always going to be changing and refining what we understand at the current time. And yet it's against everyone's best interest to do that. Yeah. Because let's say, let's say you've been studying pyramids and you've been teaching it one way for 30 years. Right. And then some new kid comes along with a different perspective, and he's like, "Oh wait, actually, like you can tell clearly here. This thing here indicates that, like, whatever. I'm just making stuff up.
Yeah, it's much older than you think.
Yeah, and totally blows that theory away. Right. They just fight and bicker about each other because
the whole institution comes to denounce this guy's a crackpot.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, we do not have a educational system which rewards thinking outside the box. In fact, quite the opposite. You can have your reputation irreparably damaged, and you will not be able to be prosperous in the field if you go against it at most times. Of course. You get written off as a crazy person and that kind of thing. And not to say that thinking outside the box is always right and superior to what the institutions have established, but there is a lot of cases where the institution has it backwards, and it's hard to dismantle with reason, because so most people, they prefer and you can compare it to like very fundamental religious people. If you say anything about any sort of criticism about the fundamentals of a religion, they'll be like, fuck you, you're so crazy. Like, how dare you ban them from the church? But it's like, if you can have just a little bit of leeway, maybe we can improve the thing.
Can I bring something up since you mentioned religion?
Yeah, I guess I probably shouldn't have done that, but
No, we can move on. We don't have to do it.
okay. I just feel like that's going to be a whole other rabbit hole. And
It's fine.
Yeah.
I was going to agree with you though about, so like I attended Penn State University, and in their, I did not attend their School of Agriculture, but in their School of Agriculture, they are funded by companies like Bayer, who own Monsanto, you know, some of these large chemical companies. So it's like they teach that you use chemicals how to farm, you know, and that's just one example of how it's like, this is a fucking grabble, man. This is like a scam. You're not teaching anyone truthful things. You're teaching someone how to use, you know, industry sponsored products to do stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, I didn't have, like I attended I was in my degree's in material science and engineering. And I had some, I mean, generally speaking, I feel like there were some very intelligent, very well-meaning people that were there. But at the same time, I feel like, man, there was so much time and energy and effort wasted on like nonsense. Like, okay, I'll give you an example. And stop me if I'm going off the rails here. I attended classes with people who would go on to like get their doctorates at MIT and Berkeley, like intellectually brilliant people. Okay. I was like the dunce of the class, basically. That's how I felt, at least, right? And when I remember being like a freshman and sitting in one of these classes, and not a freshman, it's a sophomore, and everyone would be talking about building a carbon nanotube elevator to the moon. Okay? This is what everyone fantasized about.
Okay.
All right? I mean, pretty sad, right? But okay, take it for what it is, okay? Carbon nanotube elevator to the moon. If that were even like a thing, like even if you could do that, even if the moon were solid, which I don't know if it is, okay,
yeah,
then what? Nothing. You know, like meanwhile, okay, here's my point. Meanwhile, every single animal on this planet, humans included, methane comes off of their waste. We could be harvesting that as natural gas. We could be turning our plastic waste through the process of gasification back into liquid fuels. We can be pulling static electricity out of the air. So like these things have already been proven. They've already been shown. We can have water engines, lye water engines, through the process of hydrolysis. We can have water engines. So like, you know, all of these things, electrolysis, all of these things have already been shown that they exist. Okay. And like, you take a look at some of the problems or some of the perceived problems that society has. To me, it's like we're all fighting over essentially resources to try to scrabble out an existence and a place in this realm where we don't feel like we're being stressed out 24/7 and pushed to the max all the time. And there's no reason why we can't have a reality where that's possible for everyone to feel comfortable and relaxed, because there's plenty of abundance for all. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But the only way to, I mean, from my perspective, like the way to do that is to stop acting stupid. Stop telling ourselves we're dumb. Stop acting like we can't do math because of this or because of that. It's all nonsense. A lot of these fields, there's a lingo, there's a language to create barriers, to make people feel stupid and that they can't understand. And that really there's none of this stuff is I don't believe is without of the grasp of any normal person to have a say in or understanding. The problem is I feel like that we get emotionally caught up in other things going on and it's hard to stay focused on like something. You know what I mean?
Yes. It's definitely hard to get mass cooperation and agreement on what that cooperation should be.
Yeah. So like, I mean, if someone's watching this, they might get grossed out at the notion of like harvesting human fecal matter for energy. Mm-hmm. But if you look what's going on in Europe right now, where the United States essentially sabotaged the German-Russian Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
Right.
You have a situation where the people in Germany are going through a winter and are facing an energy shortage, exorbitant prices, and they got to go back to burning coal so that people don't freeze to death. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're harvesting your own shit, man, you're sitting fat, But see, the problem is we have to get over some of these hang-ups and beliefs and notions about some of this stuff. It's hard to have a conversation with someone about like, hey, like the key to this whole thing is like really like producing our own energy. Mm-hmm. And even like alcohol is another one. Like, and again, not to go too far off the rails here, but like there's a strong case to be made that the prohibition movement really had nothing to do with guys going to the bars and getting drunk and their wives being upset, which is what we were taught in school. I think it had a lot more to do with farmers being able to make their own gas and fuel. Mm-hmm. And you do that through the distillation process. So you could turn corn, into an alcohol and into a gasoline. Yeah. And they didn't like that. Right. So they shut that shit down. But it's possible, like anyone could do it. We're just not, it's just something that people don't talk about.
Yeah. I know I certainly don't talk about it. I'm just listening. I have no pushback or input or anything. Yeah. I'm just hearing it.
Well, and then, I spend a lot of time investigating these topics and like I have solar panels, right? Yeah. But I'm willing to admit that
Do you have fecal panels?
Dude, I wish I did because the solar panels might be a grabble.
Yeah. Oh, I've heard.
The amount of energy that it takes, and by the way, I'm not trying to be holier than thou. Like I get it. Like it's.
All you can do is try. Like at one point you had information that led you to believe the solar panel was the best thing you could do, or at least a good thing you could do, better than what you were doing, and now you've received more information and realize maybe that was wrong, and maybe now you'll get a fecal panel, and then 5 years from now you'll be like, you know what, that fecal panel was a grovel too. And then we'll just be in this constant loop of, and then 5 years later it'll be a piss panel. And then
don't you find something like sort of like allegorically beautiful about like a human having to handle their own shit as some sort of signifier of like emotional growth as well, because it's like, isn't that the ultimate form of taking responsibility for yourself?
To me, it feels like metaphorically, like God going like, yep, you fucked up so bad. Now you got to get what you need from your own shit. Enjoy this for a few years, and then maybe I'll give you something not so embarrassing.
Can we talk about you for a second?
Yeah, sure.
I was listening to your show with Brian Piccolo before I came over here, and it was great, by the way. It's very, very funny. I especially love when you were just like looking at him laughing and he wasn't even saying anything.
Yeah, he does that to me.
He's got a vibe, man. His cells are vibrating in a certain way that he's just like hilarious. Also, too, I don't know if this is offensive or not to say, but I have no idea how old he is. I feel like he could look like a really young 50-year-old or like a really old 25-year-old. Okay. I have no idea which one it is.
Yeah. I think he's in his 40s.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Early 40s, I think.
Is he CIA?
No.
No one actually likes the Nats.
I don't. Yeah. No comments about sports. I don't know.
Well, you guys were talking about like the golden age of Nut Street, and mentioning some like really old school names that I really appreciated, like Sean Webb, and Chris Hargy. And there's amazing comedy and comedians in Wilmington. Starting out really in that Nut Street era, where that was where I first saw you. I think you were 18 or maybe even 17 at the time.
Yeah,
when you
17.
first started going. Yeah, and I always thought that your act and the way that you performed was very courageous.
Yeah,
to like put yourself out there in a very specific way and different at different times, and be totally committed to whatever you're doing, regardless of audience reaction, as a way to gain all sorts of kinds of experience, you know? From you may have different views on like what comedy is and what the purpose of comedy is and all this kind of stuff, but like I kind of view it through the lens of like dark exploration, silly and absurdity, and truthfulness.
Yes,
and
I like that division.
Yeah, and by the way, I would love to live in a world where there's more silly absurd. But you need to be higher vibration for that's like more higher in my opinion. Like when you're in such a state where there's not really a lot of darkness to be explored, and then there's more just silly and absurdity. But we're not really, our realm is not in that place right now. So like part of why I so enjoyed going and observing live comedians is that you're working out some of these different things in real time. And there, for you in particular, there's a truthfulness to the performance of your art. And part of the reason why I enjoy you so much is because the art is at times very challenging. Like when I'm sitting and listening to you, or hearing your music, you know, which I actually think your music is the type of your sort of wing of art that I enjoy most is your music.
Yeah, I was gonna point that out after the comedy thing. I want to hear some of your Camboi thoughts.
Oh yeah, yeah. I can give.
We'll get there.
But like if I'm sitting in the audience and you're doing comedy and I'm like, I can feel like, I actually take that as a signal to myself,
right?
That there's something inside of me that is being highlighted that I feel is out of harmony with love, or with what I feel is the creator's view of love. My personal goal is to grow in love and be the most loving person I can be, and I feel that there is a creator being, so I'm trying to get in vibrational harmony with this being. So like I know that I feel no violence or hate coming off of you when we're just in a room together. You're like, you as a person are actually quite meek, which is a wonderful, and also at times timid. And then some of your performance highlights different aspects of nature that I can look at myself and see, hey, do I have this inside of me? Is there something in here that bothers me? And if so, why? Why can't I just appreciate it for the show that it is and the creativity that it is, you know? For example, like there are some challenging like lyrics in regards to women.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like you hate women. I don't feel like you have anything against women. I mean, again, I'm not you, but you know, when your music tells stories and paints pictures. Yeah. And so like I know that in my own life that there's been times where it's like, something's vibrating in me that I know is not in a loving place, and your music is actually a great way to pull that out of me.
Yeah, that's interesting.
If that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. I mean, like part of, I think, particularly with the music and the women thing is part of the initial character intention of like Camboi Smif was to over exaggerate and like to like a hyperbolic degree the misogyny and violence and aggressiveness of rap, and to do it so over the top that it's just comedy. Like it's like just okay, this is clearly a joke, but like at the same time there is that measurement in sort of like underground hip hop culture, like hard bars. Like, damn, that's a fucking like wild, violent. I've never heard anything like that before.
Yeah.
And it's praise. So there's this weird thing of like doing it in this satirical way where it's bringing it to light to criticize and make fun of it and laugh at it, but also this way of like, no, I'm playing the game, like I'm actually trying to compete with the hardest, most like surreal bars. So it's a give and take sort of thing. Yeah.
Also too, because words are and concepts themselves are just that. And if they ignite something within inside of you, then I think that the person needs to take responsibility for that. You know, I know you're a Ye fan. Well, I don't know. Has Ye put out music yet? Has he put out music since he's changed his name?
Technically, he's been going by that since he made the album Ye, since like 2018.
Okay.
Yeah. But, so yes.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I was not up to date on that.
But. Yeah, I mean, I don't really. It's not like a hard thing where he's like, from here on out, I'm Ye. It's been like a thing. He like introduced that then, and then didn't like officially like change his name across all platforms. But like now, I guess in the past year, he's been more like, please don't call me Kanye anymore. It's just Ye now.
Well, I respect the whole name thing because really all of our names are given to us by someone else.
Yeah, I guess.
And, well, of course, because your parents named you.
But how do you know the Lord didn't name you through the parents?
Well, I actually believe that our true name is the vibration of our soul. So, like, my name is Michael. That's just a phonetic way to identify me, but the name actually means one who was like God. But it's also an incredibly popular name. It's one of the most popular names in our culture. So it's not really all that creative, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Are you aware of what Prince did with his name change?
You just put the symbol.
Yeah, but do you know why he did it?
I vaguely remember, but you can say it.
Well, I actually think this is part of his greatest performance. He was in a terrible record contract.
Yeah, he did it to get out of a contract. Or like,
they claimed that the record company claimed that they owned his identity.
Okay, yeah.
And so he said, okay. And so then as a result of that, they said, any music that you produce, because we own your entire identity, is therefore ours. And so he brilliantly said, okay, I'm going to change my name to an unpronounceable symbol. Guess what? I'm somebody different now. And again, when it's presented to us in popular culture, like I remember being like a little kid watching like Entertainment Tonight or whatever, and them talking about, crazy Prince, we won't let him, he won't let us call him Prince anymore. We gotta call him the artist formerly known as Prince. But really, he was totally right. And he was making an incredible statement. And in my mind, I enjoy some of his music, but in my mind, like, hit that act. Because, by the way, what ended up happening was the record company let him out of his deal. And so then he changed his name back to his given name. But, by the way, which is a huge victory and an awesome story. And in my opinion, that is Prince's greatest artistic work.
Right.
But yeah, going back to the whole name thing, it's like, you don't really name yourself.
I mean, you can come up with a nickname later in life and then insist that the people around you start calling you that. I feel like it's just one of those things where it's like we use words to communicate with each other.
Sure.
And so like, that thing you're wearing, like it's a shirt, right? But that's just a word that we've assigned to that thing. It's really an orchestration of different materials. That's what it truly is.
Correct.
And it's in a certain shape that fits your body, but what do you want me to do? Stop using the word body and shirt? And like, it's just language. Like we use that to point to a thing. And
yeah, for
sure, names can be arbitrary that are, maybe our parents put more or less thought into, maybe they named you Michael because they wanted you to be, that of God or whatever. What did it mean again? Child of God? What's it?
One who is like God.
One who is like God, right?
Yeah.
So, or maybe it's something that's just more aesthetic, you know, like my mom, I feel like just liked the name Cameron. Didn't really.
Does Cameron have a meaning? Have you ever looked it up?
I've looked it up on one of those like silly sites a long time ago where it says like it means crooked nose.
Wait, there's a silly site on the internet?
Yeah. A lot of people think it means shrimp because of Cameroons in Spanish, Camarons in Spanish is shrimp.
Does it really mean crooked nose?
Yeah. But I think there is also like a nicer and cooler meaning to it too that I've just never bothered to really look into. I mean,
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Although
I also find all that about like saying this name means that is also just kind of like arbitrary. Like, all right, who's saying? Like, it's like assigning meaning to dreams. You know, it's more like it's really up to you who's having the dream to figure out what the meaning of a dream is, rather than some guy on the internet saying, "Yeah, if you have a dream where you're losing teeth, it's because you're gay." You know, it's like, you know.
I agree with that, but I would like to ask you: do you not believe in word magic?
What do you mean?
Well, that there's like false power in certain words, or that like certain words are presented to mean one thing when they really mean something else.
So I guess I wouldn't say that. So where my head goes with that is that what we use our mind to believe about a thing really matters in this case. So if you are really attached and fascinated with this idea of Michael meaning one who is like God, your mind from the conscious, starting with the conscious down to the subconscious, the unconscious, is going to start believing and behaving in a way. It's like, I am one who is like God. And you're going to start acting as though you truly believe that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if I think Cameron means a fucking piece of shit asshole, and I like really just believe that, and I like that, and I latch onto that idea, in 10 years I'm probably going to be behaving more like a fucking piece of shit asshole. So, and then I guess maybe on the other side of that, the other thing it makes me think of is just sort of this like postmodernization of language, where like forever we had words that like mean a specific thing. Like the word racist is a really good example of like racist has always meant this very specific form of hate, where it's like,
I don't even think it means hate. It just means a person who recognizes race, right? We sort of attributed a hatred to
so that's
it.
what I say the postmodernization comes in. But I'm saying prior to the postmodernization of that word, racist really meant like you identify as your race and you think it is superior to other races, and you think less of races outside of your racial domain. Like that is what that's the particular meaning of racism and racist. But
can I jump in for a second?
Can I finish this thought?
Yeah.
So what the postmodernization of that word, and a lot of words like it, you know, like sexist is another one, and there's a lot even outside of this domain of like hate speech and that kind of thing, of just like twisting words and making them have broader meanings. But now it has become like, okay, well now we're going to take this word racist, which actually used to mean something kind of shitty. You don't want to be racist historically what that word means, but now we're going to adapt it and make it say, if you recognize anything about race at all, if you make any comment, and then also if you're part of a particular race group, here's what you're allowed to say that's socially acceptable. And if you're outside of this race group and you're part of these race groups, you kind of have this level of freedom to say this about, like, it's become this mess of like postmodern twisting of the word and its meaning.
I would say racist is word magic, right?
Yes.
Why is it a race? You see, even the implicit notion of the word implies that there can only be one winner in a race. So you're going to self-identify with a group, and then you're going to look at everyone else that doesn't identify with you in that way as like some other. And in the construct, there's only one winner, right? Because in a race, only one team or person can win. So like, why don't we say like ethnicity or tone or hue or shade instead of race? Yeah. Like I would say that that's a perfect example of the word magic that goes on in this place.
Well, yeah. I mean, I feel that what you've done there is you've played this linguistic trick You know, like most people accept the word race to mean this specific thing that we've always used it for. But part of this postmodernization game is to take things that has always meant a certain thing and then start to pull it apart. And then, you know, like race, it also means foot race, you know, car race. And then, you know, to me, I just feel like you've done like a trick there.
Well,
not to say anything positive or negative about it, but I feel that
I feel like I'm just unveiling what's already there. And you could pick any word. How about blackmail? Why is blackmail associated with like extorting somebody?
Yeah, but
you know what I mean.
But see, so we can go into
that puts on negative connotations on blackmails.
Right.
Seriously.
I understand that thinking, but it's totally ignoring where the term actually comes from. It has no racial relations. And I think that that's a lot of what these like sort of woke corporations are doing. Like we're going to stop using the word blackmail because it has negative racial connotations. Like, no, the fuck it doesn't. Look up where the word comes from. Look at the origins of this thing. Like blackmail.
What is the origins? Do you know?
I don't know, but I know that it's not racial.
Well, okay, fair enough.
I mean, I
don't know what the origins are, but phonetically, it just feels weird to me. Like, why not just say extortion? You know,
yeah,
or whatever, or I don't know. Do you see what I'm saying though about the word?
Okay,
like,
but see, here's the thing, and here's something that I feel like I became very fascinated with and focused on, especially studying poetry, right? Because I went in there as someone who was like making films and doing comedy, and I felt like I was really I had a fascination with storytelling, and I felt like I've always been a bigger picture kind of guy. Like I can put together interesting stories that are engaging or whatever, and then I would admit that, you know, I'm not very detail oriented. I'm not very word focused, and so I want to change that. I want to become a little more in tune with word. And so the thing you learn with poetry, because it can be just as simple as words on a page, you have to really pay attention to specifically what words you're using. So my argument to you about why don't we just use extortion or why don't we just say ethnicity is because why don't we have a wide range of synonyms of different words that we can use to mean similar things but have nuanced differences, because the words themselves carry different sort of emotional reactions to them. See, now extortion sounds much more judicial. It sounds official. Like we're going to talk about, you are legally being pinned with extortion charges.
Well, and it has to do with money too. And
yes,
blackmail doesn't have to be,
exactly. So blackmail there's nuanced differences of what those things can mean and the limitations of what you can use to label them as this, but also blackmail is more colloquial. You know, you would use that in a colloquial conversation, where extortion can sound, it has sharper edges to it. There's a different feeling to that
you think
word.
It's like mob shit.
Yeah, so I think that this trying to get rid of these words that we think have these negative connotations and association, and limiting the words that we can say or that are socially acceptable to say, I think it's blasphemy in terms of diminishing and shaving off the beauty and diversity we have in language.
Yes, I agree that we should further develop our language to capture concepts, to refine our understandings to each other. And that is an evolution. It's an ongoing thing. And I also agree that we should never ban words. I guess you would say I'm a free speech absolutist.
Can I tell you a really funny one that I know? So another one, a word that they've banned in like corporate places because it has negative connotation, flip-flops. Because flip is a racial slur to Filipinos.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. I had no clue about that.
So you play this word magic game and it just gets ridiculous. I can't say flip-flops anymore.
Well, I'm not one for trying to regulate speech. I'm one for like within yourself recognizing what you're saying and who you're saying it to. So like here's another example, right? I don't feel great about the term hello.
Okay. Why? Hello does feel like an awkward greeting.
Because you're saying hell, like hell at the person, right? You're making the same phonetic sound. Mm-hmm. And also, I think it was invented by Bell during the telephone. It's like, who cares, man? You know? I don't think it's a great greeting. So, like, I'll say good day, or good afternoon, or good morning, or, good to see you, or whatever. That's just one for me that I'm trying to like eliminate from my vocabulary, not because anyone's telling me to, but just because like I'm recognizing that like you know what, this thing that's just floating around, I don't have to accept this.
Yeah, I mean, I just have to admit to you that this line of thinking about like being uncomfortable saying hello because hell is in the word, I just find it unreasonable. Like it's like, I'm not going to say vinegar anymore because the N word is inside that word. I have to use, something else. Yeah. But do you see how like it's just a little bit ridiculous?
Well, I mean, yes, like it sounds ridiculous. It sounds ridiculous in this concept, but the overall,
we only have 26 letters. There's only so many ways to arrange them. There's going to be a lot of overlap.
The overall picture I'm trying to create is that I think that if we were all more discerning in the words that we used and understanding like the etymology and sometimes the intention behind the word, I believe affects the energy that goes out. So while your own intention, of course, like dominates the energy, I do believe that things can get twisted when people are utilizing things that are not of their own creation.
I suppose.
Does that make sense?
I suppose, but what do you expect people to do? Invent a whole new language per individual person?
I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's plenty of words within English. English is there's many words within English. And we could always be inventing new ones.
Yeah, we do. We do that.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Make it our own.
We do that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I don't even know what just happened, but
we settled it.
Yeah, I guess so. We basically just talked in circles to go like, what's happening currently is fine. What's happening currently and has always happened. Yes.
Well, do you think that the same things keep happening to humanity over and over again? I mean, I'm asking a larger question here now.
I mean, I would say that it's both. It's a mix of novelty and pattern. There's overall something brand new that's constantly happening, but there's plenty of recurring patterns that are happening without. It's not just like we're stuck in an exact loop by any means. It's like, we're on this trajectory of either moving forward or up or down or whatever, but we're always moving. And there might be little loops that just kind of like circle around it that are like, oh, this is familiar. This is very similar to the pattern we were acting out 500 years ago or have been acting out for hundreds of thousands of years. And sometimes we lose the pattern. Sometimes we keep them forever. Anyway.
So where do...
We were talking about comedy.
Yeah, do you want to talk about your music?
Yeah, sure.
It's great. I love it.
Is your favorite album still the last one?
I think my favorite album is Love Songs for Absolutely No One.
Yeah.
And I think that there is like a really wide range of lyrical content and sound that you like really weave an incredible tapestry of a complete album together. Plus, inspired by true events. So,
yeah. Is that why it's your favorite?
Well, I think that, I mean, I've known you for certainly several years now, and I have been I've been able to be your friend as you go through certain events in your life that you are then able to draw creative energy from. And I just always appreciated that honor that you give me to be your friend, and then seeing the results where it's like, wow, I actually know who some of these people are that you're that are in your art, and I'm aware of some of the concepts that you're working out in your own mind, in your own head, about who you are and your place in this realm and what this place really is.
Yeah.
You know, like Love Songs for Absolutely No One is my favorite, but there's aspects of all of your work that I really enjoy, and like really enjoy Camrona virus. You know, I was thinking about that on the way over here. Like, if you're a younger person and you were, let's say, coming to like sort of mature awareness of some sort of world around you during Donald Trump's presidency, and all of a sudden you're getting like $1,000 check in the mail, it's like, I mean, you're probably saying to yourself, when this is not like a thing, you know? Like, yeah, fuck yeah, Donald Trump gave me $1,000. Like, yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
And it also captured a kind of fear going on in the consciousness, in the population over the virus, and how we all treated each other and stuff. Yeah, it was really excellent piece of work.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
and part 2 as well.
Yeah, well, and I was gonna say on that part 2, particularly with this whole metaphor of love and fear, because I talked about it a little bit on the last podcast. It's not out yet, with my friend Kenny. But I don't know if like you noticed, there's this whole like Camrona 1, not so much, but I think the second one does it hard. There's like this hard saying, like this sort of toxic sort of fear of love that I have is being like paralleled with the virus itself.
Yeah.
And there's this thing about like everyone's afraid of the virus. And then I immediately go into lockdown. I'm locking myself down from love. And then COVID crush, I go face it and it doesn't work out. So then I turn my back on love again with take your vitamins, and there's this arc. And then of course the necessary thing to happen after that album is Love Songs for Absolutely No One, where it's a complete dive into love.
Well, yeah, and I would say that like that it mirrored the, I mean, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I resonated with how you presented the events, because there was a kind of romanticism in the beginning.
Yeah. There was no sort of like, there was no political or corrupt edge within the first week that I made that first album.
And it did seem like
it was just playing around
more or less everybody did know someone that had died recently. So it did feel like there was something happening, but if you're in kind of, you know, reasonable good shape, you kind of felt okay about everything, but then everything's closing down.
Yeah.
And there's this like feeling of like, well, I kind of feel fine, but I'm now I can't connect with anybody.
Yeah. Well, I think the feeling in that first week of lockdown was like, this is unprecedented. I've never experienced anything like this in my life. This is crazy. What the fuck is going to happen? Yeah. You know? And I don't know. I feel like there was some creative freedom that brought, where it was kind of like, fuck it. We all might be dead really soon.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, I think those feelings sort of creep in for people at different points in the journey, you know, because you start to say to yourself, like,
I might as well enjoy
I'm wearing a mask inside of my car by myself. What is this? What kind of life is this? You know. But then you also never know how someone else is interpreting things. So like if you're out and you want to talk to somebody, or you know you're both enjoying a show or you know whatever, and you want to like you know just have a human moment with somebody. It's like, oh man, are these people are afraid? Am I going to be infringing on what they view as their medical sovereignty if I get within 6 feet of them or whatever?
If I go for a handshake or a hug at the end of this interaction, are they going to take this as a death threat? Yeah. And you know, and also in the beginning where you're unsure about how serious it is, you're like, should I be scared to shake people's hands and hug them? Yeah, I mean, well, this sort of comes back to like viruses and like what things really are, and what you know, is there a contagion? You know, is that a thing? You know, I do think that I do not believe in contagion, but I do think that there is
something going on with like when a person is in a healing mode, that there's a resonant frequency that can affect other people. So like, are you aware of the concept of when women are in the same sharing space that their periods will sync up?
Yeah, I've heard that.
So excuse me, their cycles. I believe that a similar thing happens when a person feels ill. I think that if you're like shedding material and your system's cleaning stuff out, if you're around someone, it might induce it or it might not. So going back to like your double album, the second album, I feel like highlighted a lot more of the darkness that happened when the vaccine became available.
Oh yeah.
Because then there was a big shift in feeling there too. Like I remember, like, I mean, one of your songs is Dark Winter, right? You have Biden talking about it. Like the White House put out a press release saying it was going to be a dark winter for the unvaccinated.
Yeah.
I mean, whoa, man. You know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, not chill.
Yeah, no. So Camrona 2 is definitely very focused on like fear mongering and paranoia on both ends, and definitely about just kind of the ridiculousness of, you know, the album art itself. It has like Microsoft Organic up in the top left corner. And
well, how weird is it that like the computer guy that everyone got viruses from is now like the guy that's like, you know, trying to fight against viruses?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, talk about a fractal reality, man. Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, Camrona 2 is definitely the heavier and more robust one of the two, where Camrona 1 is just more fun. And
dare I say it's more angry?
2 is more angry?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I would use anger.
Maybe just reflecting the darker nature of what we were going through as a society at the time.
Yeah, I would say darker. More heady. Like more bar heavy and more, I had more to say. Where I feel like Breathing's really the only track on the first Camrona where I like said something.
Yeah.
The other ones are more just playing around and having fun with the language and the rhetoric surrounding the thing that we're all as a globe focused on right now.
Yeah. And, you know, part of like my enjoyment of experiencing your career is your evolution of your creativity as you grow as a person. And as we live through similar events or similar things going on in the realm.
Are there things that come to mind about like what you see in that evolution? Asking for just outside perspective, honestly.
Well, I would say that I've always respected that you've lived your life passionately and that you have always put yourself out there. The way that you put yourself out there changes and evolves. You know, I think even sitting here is a beautiful expression of that, you know, like where, you know, before it was you were, you know, trying to push the limits of your own performance art to get various reactions out of people and to test your own limitations. Now you're creating an environment where people can explore and create art in a different way, in a different form that is accessible to a lot more people, that is open to a lot more people's potential enjoyment. You know, I think this podcast is a wonderful like evolution of yourself. You're putting yourself out here in a big way. I mean, you got lights and you got cameras and you got studio and you're editing your own work and all that, man. And all that takes effort and energy and time. And kudos to you for like investing in your own skills to be able to create the reality that you want, man. You know, I think that's awesome.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
I view your ability to create with videography, sound design, that's not just an art. Those are like actual real skills. And, you know, I feel like we're living in a reality where not like real skills are not praised or encouraged. I think that the more skills that you have, the more the potential that you have to create and build the reality that you want.
Right.
Yeah. I don't have the ability to, at this point, let's say edit a podcast, but that's not really my passion. Like, I'm more interested in, like, I'm creating soil. I have soil going right now.
Right.
And so, we all, as we grow, our expressions of our own creativity is going to change. So I would say that the biggest change is we're literally sitting in it right here. That you went from making albums on your HP Pavilion to now sitting here making podcasts talking about, like, the nature of reality and stuff, dude. That's great.
Well, I haven't made an album on an HP Pavilion since 2015. But
it's incredible. I mean, it really is. For you to create on a budget and with very limited resources, you're a creativity machine. The amount of quantity that you put out is alarming at some points.
Yeah. And then I wanted to ask you too. I know you brought up there's songs that have challenged you before. So are there any specific songs that come to mind? Like, what would you say was the most challenging song to your memory, and what was that experience like hearing it for the first time? And what did you move? What was your experience moving through what it brought out of you?
Yeah, I can't name a specific song, but the topic of abortion was very challenging for me.
Okay.
And that is something that has come up in your work.
Yeah. Probably the Angel Baby song.
Yeah. And that's a good song. Like, that's a good beat and a good flow, and you sound great on the track.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very challenging, And by the way, when I say challenging, like, I feel that if there is something inside of yourself that you have not settled to the point that the creator agrees with it, that there's going to be some sort of vibrational disharmony in yourself. So, like, the way I view our body is that we have a physical body, and then over top is like a spirit body, which I believe is part of what is I can sort of see you glowing, when I take off the glasses. And then I think that we have a soul that extends beyond that, right? And so I think that when we're in a situation where we're out of harmony with this creator being, that creates spiritual blockages in our body that then crystallize down into physical disease and ailments.
Yeah. So,
like, let's say I would say that I have taken part in 2 abortions because my partner at the time, I impregnated her twice unintentionally, and we chose together to terminate both pregnancies both times, right? And this is, like, very challenging because, like, what I'm about to say, like, is going to probably upset, like, everybody.
Yeah.
But this is how I feel about it.
Yeah.
I do believe that the soul incarnates into a being at the moment of conception. But I also believe that humans should have the right to terminate the abortion or terminate the pregnancy.
Yeah, that's pretty much. I don't know if I believe specifically the first part of that, but I don't not believe it either. I don't know is really.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely come to the point of, I feel like historically most of my life I've been, like, of course, pro-choice, but I think I've come to understand the pro-life side of things a little more and have sympathy for that point of view. But even then, in the end, I still think that the right to choice is preferred and should be available. However, I do think that there should be some sort of cultural conversation to discourage that choice and not, like, shame the choice, but to try to because I see the problem lying in the mass sort of refusal or putting off of the responsibility and the beauty of having a child. And so I think that we not that this argument's not valid at all, but I think we lean on this argument of, oh, that child will have a bad life if they come in because the parents are so poor. And that kind of like the child won't have a good life. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do see what you're saying. The way
I think the reason, and I wanted to say why I'm saying, because I think that yes, the family may be poor, but the child might be the very reason that you have the motivation to pull yourself out of poverty, and you have something that's beyond yourself.
That's fair.
And more important than yourself to take care of.
That's fair point.
And you're. I think there's just this mass idea around children are annoying and they suck, and you don't want to have them. It's going to ruin your life to have a kid. Like I think that is it's a doomsday twisted reality.
I don't necessarily believe that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to, if people want to have families, go ahead, by all means have families. I don't feel like we should be really legislating choices away from people.
Right.
And honestly, in any sense, like in the spirit world, like I know that we're living in a physical reality here, but anyway, okay. So I'm kind of going off on the rails here. I should say this, right? I feel that I participated in ending 2 lives.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying other people have to feel that way, but I have communicated with the creator about this topic, and there was a lot of emotion that went on about it, right? So I released a lot of fear and grief around this topic and this issue, and I feel at this point that like I feel that God recognizes that it is a life that occurs, and that I did end those lives. And so I would not be able to do that again. And I don't advocate that people do that, but if people do ask, that is how I feel about it. So it's kind of like, imagine having a political discussion with somebody, because like people on the right are like, yeah, life begins at conception. We can't have any abortions. People on the left are like, we have to worry about the people that are here. These are legitimate medical procedures, and there's all kinds of extenuating circumstances for the multitude of situations that people go through. We need to have this as a reality, right? And like, they don't want to acknowledge that at some point a spirit of something goes into something to animate it, right?
Right.
And the people on the other side don't want to acknowledge.
It's not a scientific claim, and most people, if it's a non-scientific claim, then it's bogus.
But then the people on the right don't want to acknowledge that they supposedly love freedom or whatever, and they're setting rules and boundaries for people and encroaching on people's like medical decisions.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one, man. People don't want to hear, it's just one of those things that makes people really uncomfortable. And it's not easy for me to say all this, but I feel like I can say it because, again, I feel like I've made my peace with God about this particular topic.
Right. Well, there's a lot to this is a good potent thing to segue into a lot of the other things that you sent me on that list of topics to discuss. So one, I guess, would be interesting is just talking about your conception or your conceptualization of a creator being. I'm sure you've heard me talk about God a number of times on the podcast. So I would like to hear you. I've heard you before, but it always evolves and develops.
Sure.
And you can get better at using your words to try to, say the untouchable with words, but describe your understanding of God or the creator being, and why do you like saying the creator being?
I actually have different terms for what I call what God or creator or source. I think all of them could apply.
Okay.
And I think that the main, so I feel that there are, I'm going to give my feeling about what what I understand about God, and then I'll work backwards as to how I've come to those conclusions. So I do believe that God is a being that is soul-based.
Okay. Well, what do you mean by that? Like, I think the better way to answer it is, why do you feel the need to use your words to distinguish that? Because to me, I've always understood it as like, no. The thing that you're saying about God is not how I see it. It's specifically a being.
Well, because some people like to view God as an energy or a force that just animates all.
Okay.
And I don't view God that way. I think that God has a character and a personality and a nature, and is not just like plugging in a toaster and pressing the button. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but do you think there's a way for God to simultaneously be an abstract force, but to also have the personality traits that are that of a being? Like animate all the things you said, but also to be this more abstract force.
I do think that's possible. And actually, my conception of God was rooted in Catholicism. I was brought up Catholic and went to Catholic school. And I'm not Catholic now, and I have a lot of issues with Christianity in general, and also the mysticism on which Christianity was based off of, which we call Judaism. But there are kernels of truth, I feel, in all of it, and I do believe in like there being like one God. So they do teach that that is like a thing, right?
Yeah, the monotheism is the nugget which you still hold on to from that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now the difference is that I believe that God is like totally loving, whereas what you find in the Torah and in the Old Testament and a lot of times in the New Testament is that God is this punishing, vengeful man. And I wouldn't even say that God's a man. I would say that God is a complete being that probably is masculine and feminine. I mean, really, if anything, see, this is like one of those things I never get. Like, you know, in all of the people that talk about these major religions, right? None of them talk about like the femininity. Like, where is the feminine energy that is necessary for creation, you know? Yeah. So you can see that there's like some grapples there because they're totally ignoring
what I think. And again, we're not, this stuff is not hardwired or like has hard boundaries, but I think if we're speaking, where is the femininity in the text? Like we're talking about biblical stuff.
Yeah.
I think that they use God as the masculine force and they use nature as the feminine force. That's what I seem to like. There's God and there's Mother Nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair. I mean, I view, I mean, going back to answering your question of like what my conception is, I think that God has masculine and feminine aspects, but it's the same being. And that's even if masculinity and femininity exist. I don't really know, because like some cells just divide, like one becomes two, you know? So I'm not necessarily trying to project like what I think. In other words, like, I don't know, everyone has this conception of God being a man, but like God being a man wouldn't reproduce with himself.
Yeah, I mean, and also I've never, again, even with something like that, seeing God as a man, to me, one, I don't personally do that myself. To me, I've always seen, not always, but I think I've come around to seeing this, seeing God as a man, to that concept itself serves as a function. Like, it's not that it is definitely scientifically the case, right? Because the case is he's neither. It's neither. It's not. It doesn't make sense to. But see, I think when you think about it specifically as a being, that's when you start to personify it, and then you start to wonder, well, is it a man or a woman? It's like, it doesn't really matter. But if you're talking about abstract forces, you do believe that there's an abstract masculine force and an abstract feminine force, right? Or is that also what you're saying? I don't know.
Well, we call. Okay, so I acknowledge that there is a male force and a female force.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that necessarily attributes to masculinity and femininity, because I look around in our culture,
Mm-hmm.
and I see a lot of warped views on what masculinity and femininity are from all angles.
Mm-hmm.
So it leads me to question whether it's a totally human concept.
Well, I guess we could argue all things that we have words for are merely human concepts, because I think when you get to the nature of what everything is, if
masculinity and femininity are forces,
mm-hmm.
wouldn't you agree that within each person that you've got some mix of masculinity and femininity? You're not 100% masculine or 100% feminine, right? Because what do we even attribute as masculinity and femininity?
Yeah, but I do think that whether we are a man or a woman does matter in that mix. I mean, it's almost kind of like you think the yin and yang thing. There's the black side that has a little white dot, and then there's the white side that has a little black dot. So it's like you could say the man is like the black with a little white dot of femininity.
Yeah.
Every man has a little bit of femininity. Every woman has a little bit of masculinity, and then it can vary.
Mm-hmm.
Some men have more femininity, and some women have more masculinity than most. And then of course there's this weird thing where people are more androgynous, and you can't even tell what they are, and and that kind of thing. And I mean that's a whole different conversation. But I think what I was getting at in terms of think about reality, like everything beyond whatever you can put into existence
Mm-hmm.
is a single cake. And I think something like saying that there's a masculine energy or a feminine energy, these are human concepts, and it's just one way of cutting the cake. It's not like it's the only way of cutting the cake. It's not
Fair
that
enough.
it's not that these things necessarily exist, like we can pull evidence that this is the case, that there is a masculine energy and a feminine energy,
Mm-hmm.
but it's concepts in the mind that we use to divide up the world. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is the nature of masculine energy, this is the nature of feminine energy. The truth is it's all one thing, and that there is no anything. There's no use to use words to divide reality or cut the cake. We don't even have to cut the cake at all,
Mm-hmm.
but to play with ideas. And so that's what I think God is. I think he is a way of cutting the cake. And you can choose to cut the cake and say God is particularly the highest form of masculine energy and the high order in the universe. You can cut the cake that way.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can have this other view of God. Like, no, God's a woman. God's all the feminine energy in the world. You can
Mm-hmm.
have that, and you can see the world that way. And I think that's what matters, is whatever you choose to believe or were led to believe and was chosen for you by someone else, or you unconsciously believe, that's going to be the way that it comes back to this thing about, if you believe your name Michael has this meaning that one who is like God, you're going to see the world through that lens.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see yourself in your reflection that way.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. If I think I'm a goddamn piece of shit because my name's Cameron, I'm going to see the world that way. So if I see God as the highest being and I see God as a woman, I'm going to focus on all the elements that I believe and experience as feminine energy. Be like, that's God. When I talk to God, I'm gonna hear a woman's voice because I believe that. So I think that's what I'm getting at with the whole masculine feminine thing. I'm not saying like you don't think that this is a real thing. It's just more.
No, I totally get it, and I agree with everything you said.
Okay, cool.
So this being, I feel, is not, in other words, like the creator is not a part of their own creation.
Right.
So I do feel that there is some separation between us being in an environment and access to the creator. But I feel that there is a force that each person or each living soul has a direct connection to this being, that if they want to communicate with the creator on the creator's terms, they can do that. And so the way I was taught to do this is that I was taught to recognize that there are, okay, so I'm skipping ahead here. So like I believe this being has love for us.
Yeah.
This is a pretty important part, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can imagine.
Yeah. This being, I mean, again, if you're intellectually allowing yourself to come along with this conversation, right? Like, I'm suggesting that the creator of our total environment here is separate from this place, but yet has a conduit of energy to connect to each person should you want to access it, okay? The way to access this being's love is to be humble. And by humble, I mean to have a desire to feel all of your own emotions. So let's say, for example, that you believe that men are better than women, okay? If that's a belief in your soul, and that belief does not agree with the creator, in other words, if the creator believes that there is no better, that men and women are two aspects of one, then that's going to harm or hinder your ability to connect with the creator on this particular issue. So essentially, I believe my understanding of how we get blocked up spiritually is that we inherit beliefs from our parents, people around us, society, our teachers, our friends, and ourselves. But like when I say like we absorb, I mean like from the moment of conception, like when you're gestating in your mother's womb, like you're absorbing her emotional state, her thoughts, beliefs, feelings about everything. And oftentimes,
something you said to me a long time ago, I love this idea. And I don't know if you still believe this specifically, but I like this idea that you see DNA as crystallized emotion.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that, again, DNA is the effect of a long history of crystallized trauma. I think it's trauma, actually.
Yeah.
I think it's crystallized trauma. Right. And so
I like emotion. Because it's more of a neutral term where I feel like trauma is inherently negative.
You're right. Crystallized emotion is probably better. But if you look at like countries and nations and ethnicities, it's like it's groups of people that self-select inside of their own community traits that they value and attributes or characters of the various people that then, have families and have lots of children and all this kind of stuff, right? And that those can manifest into physical manifestations. I mean, that's we look different. Our like I said, our DNA, right? We say like, oh, you've got this DNA, so that your ears look this way or your hair looks this way. But what if like we have the ability to change our DNA?
We do.
I believe we do as well.
Yeah.
And I think it can get pretty weird because if people start to like come to the realization that they could do that, that has all kinds of ramifications for like even the nature of reality. Yeah.
Well, they say that the whole like archetypal story of rescuing your father from the belly of the beast, that's what it's about. Changing DNA. It's about taking the DNA, the disposition that you were given by your father, and using your finite time in life to shift that DNA in you so that you pass it along better DNA to your children.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and so something you touched on earlier about behaving in a way that is outside of harmony with the creator being's view of love.
Yeah.
Something I've learned over the years that I feel like scratches the surface of that from like a scientific side of things is, we have this idea that like our morality and ethics are societal constructs, but they seem to be, the reality is that they seem to be much more biologically rooted in organism behavior. Like, because you can look at wolves in the wild, like when a beta and alpha are getting in a fight with each other, and then the alpha pins down the beta and has the ability to bite out its throat and kill it. It doesn't. It shows it mercy there. And another interesting thing is these experiments with rats, how they have like an obviously bigger rat wrestling and playing with the smaller rat. And if the big rat wants to win every time, it can. But I think 1 out of every 4 times or 1 out of every 3 times, the big rat always lets the little rat win so that the little rat will continue to play. Because if it doesn't do that, then the little rat will just stop playing.
Yeah.
So there does seem to be, even in like, you know, animal behavior, this sort of like acting out of ethics that seems to be like biologically rooted.
Yeah, but you know, we take it so far because we get violent and we kill each other, and that's not chill.
Well, yeah. Well, I would say that behavior is outside of the creator's view of love. But what I'm saying is those behaviors, like the wolf example, the mouse behavior. I think that though that is like the creator's view of love being part of this biologically rooted ethos, and that I think the thing that separates us from the animals is having the ability and the choice to act outside of that. And the world will show us, like, by living in a psychological space of hell, an actual physical space of war and hell and famine and all kinds of things. And that's something that I think you might like. I had an interesting conversation with a couple of missionaries earlier this week. And it was just kind of a random thing that happened. Random.
Were they Mormons?
No, they were Christians.
Well, Mormons are Christians, but go ahead.
I don't know. I wouldn't call Mormons a faction of Christianity.
Were they wearing the okay, that's fine. Jehovah's Witnesses?
No, I think they were Methodists.
Okay.
But I think that it was kind of like they started Catholics and one of them was this, and then they decided together as a couple they're going to be Methodist.
Okay.
To meet in the middle somewhere.
Okay.
Anyway. Or no, I think maybe one was Catholic, one was Methodist, and they decided to meet in the middle at Episcopalian. That might be right.
Okay.
I could be getting this confused with Mr. Truby I had on the last podcast. But anyway. Something about and I think that this is comparable to like this relationship you would have with the creator being of finding out what is loving harmony, a harmonious, loving way of being. That's what your goal is, to have that relationship with the creator being, to guide you into what is the most loving and harmonious.
You're going to make mistakes.
Right.
But you get to test some things out. Yeah.
So these people's concept was more like, please replace the word creator being with Jesus Christ, right? So you have, and I know that that's a loaded thing and that you have all sorts of thoughts about that. But,
I do.
But let's just assume from an objective point of view that you guys are actually abstractly talking about the same thing. You just have different images and words that you're using for it.
Yeah.
Because I think you both are focused on this idea of how do I have a relationship with this other thing outside of me that is guiding me towards a loving way of being. Both of you agree on that. So now, you might have differences in identifying what is and is not loving behavior. I wouldn't put that past you. But you might not. You might have a lot of similar ideas there. You don't know. So in that, this guy was saying that he found that the Bible and a lot of these different factions of Christianity or biblical teachings actually are overcomplicating the whole thing, and that the overcomplication of, like, you know, this is why people go do missions for several years and they think they have to do this to have that loving relationship and have that relationship with Jesus or whatever. And so he's saying it's much more simple than that, and you just ask for forgiveness. You have that immediate relationship and forgiveness, and then you're guided by it. And he says that the overcomplication in the churches and in the text, this is a trick of the devil. And so I thought that you might find that interesting, because I think that you said things that are not those words exactly, because this is more of a Christian who has a personal relationship with Jesus, his rhetoric. But I think that you guys say some same ideas, just with different rhetoric and different imagery in your heads. And I'm not saying you believe the same thing, but
I understand what you're saying.
I'm finding a parallel.
You're observing, you're perceiving very similar behaviors between two people who may believe totally different things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I understand. My response to that is that I think that in this concept of trying to like have a better relationship with the creator, and by the way, in that I mean like that your emotional state is elevated and your ability to manifest things that are within the boundaries of love come at you fast and furious, you know. I think that if you keep looking to change all of your beliefs to ultimately match up with the creator being, like vibrationally speaking, I think that's what a Christ is. So, whereas like I feel that each person could be a Christ, Christianity teaches that Yeshua, who's a man, that being is God.
Yeah.
And therefore, you shouldn't try to be like God, because that's blasphemy.
Yeah, well, and this is one of those things where, from my understanding of having similar conversations in the past, and also, like, you know, as you said, and as I've picked up on, like, you have some qualms with Christianity. And I'm sure it has a lot to do with your specific experience, like, with it. And,
of course.
And I kind of see a lot of the qualms to be colored by your personal experience, and I see like the text, or even just taking something specific like the figure, the archetypal personality of Jesus Christ, as like this abstract painting that's hanging up in a gallery, and then you're looking at it, and then someone else is looking at it, and you just have completely different reactions and interpretations to it. And it's like your reaction might be one that's exuding and bringing up this trauma in you, where this person might actually be have completely different details and views about this thing that are actually very beneficial and do serve them in what you're describing as this emotionally expansive journey.
I understand totally what you're saying. I would say that I would say that I'm not speaking to like what I'm saying is not going to be of value or of interest to most people. But for those people that have been brought up in Christianity and are no longer a part of Christianity for whatever reason, I would say that there are inherent beliefs within Christianity that color our view of reality that I feel are non-loving and are insidious and can cause emotional problems in our lives, because I feel that if we hold on to things, our soul is going to manifest what's in a part of our soul. So like I'll give an example, okay? In Christianity, you're taught that Jesus died for your sins, okay? And that by believing in him as the Son of God and God, I guess, I don't think that saying he's the Son of God is blasphemy, because I think we're all children of God. But to say that he is God, I personally think is incorrect. But they believe in Christianity, Jesus is God, and his assassination allows for everyone who believes that he was God to go to heaven. I think that's a pretty fair summarization of part of what they believe. Okay. Part of that is a belief that sacrifice is love, or that loving behavior includes sacrifice. You see, because Jesus sacrificed his life for all of us.
And you think that's non-loving, the sacrifice?
Totally. Totally. I don't think there's anything about his assassination that does anything for anyone's soul. I think that being did live. And I believe that he attempted to teach people how to have a personal relationship with the Creator. And I think that his strength to the creative source was incredibly threatening to every single person I understand that.
Yeah. So here's again, you understand like my interpretation of these things. Like it goes back to this cake cutting thing where it's like, I'm not making claims whether this person did or did not exist. In fact, I don't care.
Yeah.
I think I've heard that there's evidence that he does, and I've heard people say it just doesn't.
There's really not a whole lot of evidence to suggest that he really lived, but there's know.
Yeah, and to me, that's all beside the point. It goes back to just it's an abstract representative painting, and so I think that this idea that how you presented it is I think to get right to the point is you say, I don't believe that his sacrifice is meaningful or did anything.
Correct.
Right. And so I think that that's just the nature of belief is if you don't believe it did anything, it doesn't do anything for you. But if you do believe it does something for you, it does do something for you. And I think that's the line in the sand, and that's what I think the nature of something like a biblical text or a religion is like. It has very much to do with the conscious unconscious relationship you have with the text or the belief or the icon or the symbolism. It's how are you processing it? How are you using it? Either consciously is maybe 10% of it, and then 90% of it is, are you emotionally connected to it? Do you emotionally, against your control, feel uplifted by this thing? And do you feel in your body through emotional expansion that Jesus Christ's sacrifice moves you higher spiritually and that you feel relieved of your sin? So I think... Yeah, I think I put my finger right on it there. Is that the binary difference of do you believe it or not? And because you don't, it doesn't do it for you. But if one did, it does.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm not going to argue with like the placebo effect and the power of your mind playing a role in creating. Well, but the placebo effect is just you creating the reality, right?
I guess, but see, it sounds like you're undermining the placebo effect.
No, I respect the placebo effect a lot.
Because it's very real.
It's incredible.
In fact, what we were talking about earlier about mind over matter, where it's like you can have physical illnesses because of what's going on with your mind and emotionally, that's exactly what the placebo effect is.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, you can think yourself into cancer. It's very real.
Yes, I agree. So, okay, but taking that, I do believe that there are ways that you can experiment with yourself as a person, as an individual, with your emotions to try to see if you can manifest a more favorable reality for yourself. And I think it all has to do with challenging your emotions and feeling out your emotions. So, like, this gets back to taking in your art, right?
Yeah.
If there's something in me, like if I'm identifying with anger in one of your songs, okay, then like I talk to God about it. Or I will actually feel out the anger in the comfort of my own home. And like that, initiating that process actually creates a physical response where like my body might shake out, which is what I would call fear, and then maybe cry.
Right.
And it's in those moments, and you know, we've all had experiences where we are taking in art, we're at a concert, we're, you know, even at a comedy show, and we're laughing so hard we cry, or the music is hitting us so hard that that we cry. And I think that's like a grief release, joy intake kind of thing. And I think that like those kinds of experiences are the things that help our soul expand.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's about challenging yourself and feeling out your negative emotions to grow.
Yeah. So, and this is going back to like high level here. To me, and I'm not saying this either negatively. This is more just a neutral observation. To me, I've always kind of seen your position on this sort of thing as, if you imagine, just for the sake of simplifying it for metaphorical purpose, or using metaphor for simplification purposes, if a religious ideology or a spiritual ideology is more like a software that we're putting in our mind and body, you know, you can think of Christianity like that. It's like I don't want to make it up myself, so I'm going to use a book that already exists. I'm a Christian, right? That's what a lot of people do because it's simple. They don't need to take that burden on themselves. And in fact, there's an argument to be made for that because there's a humbleness to that position of like, I don't feel that in my limitations as a human being that I can take it upon myself to come up with an entire robust religious spiritual text that's going to take care of me better than those ancient ones that already exist that people have been working on for like a lot of our evolution and development. So to me, and I think this is what a lot of people do who are like spiritual but not religious, is they take it upon themselves to create their own. Right? Like, I don't need the software that already exists. I can create it on my own. Either they're pinning that on their own ego or they have a belief. It sounds to me like you are co-creating this with the creator being, right? The creator being is that which guides you in coming up with a superior software to the flawed software that is Christianity, Judaism, blah, 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 blah. Would you say that that's a fair analysis?
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to put it.
Yeah. So, I from there, and another interesting thing that came up with this conversation that I feel like is, again, it's this gold nugget that I feel like is sort of the pan, like in the most, what's the word? Forgiving interpretation of all the ancient religions. I feel like the thing that we all agree on in non-secular terms is love is the way, fear is not. Fear is the opposite of the way. And I feel like that's the thing I wish that everyone could just like understand that we agree on, because we do. When you get down to brass tacks, no one's like, no, love is bad and fear is good. You know, no one's doing that except for the people that are like genuinely trying to be corrupt. Now, the definitions people have of what love is, that's where we need to converse and talk about what love is. So, with that being said, let's talk about love. Let's talk about, I mean, all kinds of love, but just with that being the topic, where does your head go?
So, I mean, it's a fascinating topic, of course, and you're absolutely right in the sense that it's essentially useless to try to talk to somebody about these topics unless you're agreeing, you have some agreement on what these terms even mean, you know? And so if you're operating under the belief system or the understanding that there is a loving creator being that has like a personality and a character and nature, that being is going to have an opinion on what is loving and what is non-loving. And some of this can be observed or felt in the construction of reality. But also, I believe we can tap right into this being directly and get an understanding about that. Now, I do feel there's a way to do that. But before I say what that is, imagine that possibility, right? Like, let's say you're in a relationship with somebody and there's some kind of disagreement about something, right? And you both sincerely want to find out the most loving answer, the way to resolve your situation, right? If you're tapping into the same source, then you can trust that there's not favoritism or that you're not being taken advantage of or whatever, because you're tapping into the same energy. And if you are the one that's in error in that situation, you can feel about that and accept it in a mature way and move on in whatever particular situation, right? So all that being said, the way I was taught to receive this being's love is that there's an equation, okay?
How were you taught? Like, was there a place you went? YouTube. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, because it sounds ridiculous, but I have no trouble saying it. There's a guy who claims to be Jesus, like the reincarnated.
Is this the
version.
Yeshua guy you were watching? Okay, I remember like 2018 we were camping. You were playing some stuff. Okay.
Yeah, I should say the channel's Divine Truth, and the guy's legal name is AJ Miller, and he's got like hundreds of hours of material teaching about the human soul, God, how to experiment with reality to determine if God is real or not. And everything he teaches or suggests really has nothing to do with his personal identity, right? So what he teaches and what I have found to be truthful in my own life is that there is a layering of emotions that prevent us from connecting to this creator being. And basically it goes like this. We change our beliefs in our soul to meet our surroundings, whatever that may be. So now, because we're out of vibrational harmony with God in this particular area, fear starts to build up over top of really it's sadness. So when we have to change our belief, that will initiate grief. And then over top of the grief builds up fear. And then we don't want to feel our fear. So we develop addictions to temporarily quench our fear. And an addiction can be anything from drinking coffee to having someone agree with you, you know?
Okay.
Or like hardcore drugs. Like it could be literally anything, you know?
I just think it's a funny example. Coffee or having someone agree with you.
Yeah.
The most prominent addictions.
Yes. And if your addictions are not met, then we experience anger. So how interesting to think that every time that you yourself get angry, that it's actually because you've put an expectation on someone that they have not met. Kind of interesting. If we're not able to feel out our anger in a general way or loving way, then the next level of that is apathy or depression. So like my advice to anyone that is looking to feel God's love or experiment with this emotions in their own life, to recognize wherever they're at in a particular situation and try to go to the next level down. So if you're constantly getting angry, try to get into your fear. If you're always in your fear, try to feel out your sadness. You know what I mean? And I think that it's when you cry and release grief, it's in that moment that you can ask God for her love, his love. And usually that in that moment, you're
they them's love.
The vibration will change, and then now you're able to receive like more information, and I believe gain in perception. I think there's all kinds of things that can be unlocked within the human body that we're not really fully tapping into. And I think that the more that we explore ourselves emotionally, I think that the higher our potential, literally the higher our electrical potential could be.
Yeah.
So real quick, I'll just say it one more time. It's working through everything is there's sadness at our core, then fear covers the sadness. We develop addictions to cover our fear. If we don't get our addictions met, we experience anger. If we're not able to feel our anger, we develop apathy. So if we find ourselves, and you can be apathetic in one area and not in another, right? So if you're apathetic about like the state of the world or your career or your love life or whatever, and this kind of stuff, I would encourage you to actually feel your anger. I'm a screamer myself. And what will happen is you scream for 30, 40 seconds, and then you might drop on the ground and start crying and release grief. It could happen that quick. You know, we make judgments about feeling our own emotions. You know, that guy's crazy, that woman's insane, don't go near them, they're dangerous. You know, it's really, as long as you're not freaking out in public, I think you're totally cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think emotion, literally the word magic stands for energy in motion. So when we hold things inside of ourselves, we're blocking stuff up. And if I may segue into another area here, sexual attraction.
Yeah, I was hoping it would go here.
Yeah. So, okay, like sexual attraction is this thing that like the vast majority of us seem to experience. And yet no one really talks about it other than a way to market and manipulate people into purchasing products.
Right.
So obviously we know that this phenomenon exists, right?
Yeah.
Well, I have an interesting understanding of, I have a understanding of what sexual attraction may be. Okay. I think that when we develop these blocks, these little, like, call them like energy blockages in our spirit body because we're not in harmony with the Creator, then, as I said before, our energy flow within our entire body is restricted, right? So when you come across another person who has, let's say, a sympathetic or corresponding blockage within their spirit body because they have a similar belief in their soul, that a kind of cord or of spiritual energy can develop between you. And actually, it can be more than one cord. It can be many, many cords. And the more, so now, okay, you've got energy flowing. You're perceiving an energy flow in a spot where you have never perceived it before. So we interpret that. I believe this is what we interpret as sexual attraction.
Okay.
Now, that being said, I do believe there is like a real, genuine, honest love that is possible from within all beings. But I also believe we have soulmates.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting because very few people talk about this concept. But I do think it's true. And I think that the way we find our soulmate is by working through our emotional errors, sins, traumas, whatever you want to call them. And then we develop partnerships with various people on the way to finding our mate. So let's say you find yourself attracted to okay, I'll give an example of my own life, okay? Because this did actually happen to me. I was in a partnership with a woman for several years, okay? She did not know who her biological father was when we first got together, okay? During the course of our relationship, she found out who her biological father was. And obviously, as you can imagine, very emotional event to go through that, and met him and some of her extended family that she didn't even know that she had. So all of these things are very, very emotional, right? So she's crying, sadness but joy, and feeling a bunch of stuff out, and there's feelings of sadness of not knowing who these people were that are so wonderful, but also joy of having new people in your life going forward, like all kinds of stuff's happening, Well, our relationship ended shortly after she found all this out, okay? And, okay, now fast forward to a couple years later. I have reason to believe that the person whom I was told was my father is actually not my biological father. Now, if that's true, it's interesting to think that, hey, you know what? Like, I'm in a relationship with a woman who doesn't know who her biological father is, okay? And then she heals this aspect of herself. And then all of a sudden our relationship ends because of a lack of attraction, or attraction changes, And so I think that's what happens. I think that as we have emotional experiences, that our band of vibration, or the quantity, or who we are attracted to, changes. And I believe that if you keep doing that, if you keep following that pattern, you eventually find the other half of yourself.
Okay.
And theoretically, the passion and attraction that you would feel for the other half of yourself would be of an intensity that you can't use words to describe. Like, I've got this thing where it's always bothered me, this concept of like I don't feel comfortable getting married to somebody if I know I'm going to be attracted to other people. And a lot of people like just dismiss this topic, like, everyone goes through it, or, hey, that's, relationships take work and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, I don't know if I buy all that. If I buy all that. I think that our sexual attraction is electromagnetic in nature. I believe that the vast majority of what we experience, or what we interpret as sexual attraction, is actually codependent emotional injury. But I believe that there is a true creative and loving force that resides within us that most people just aren't really tapping into.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I just want to fuck. You know? I've always found your views on this very interesting. I think the best I have in terms of what I've experienced in terms of gaining a healthier relationship with my emotional or sexual attractions has been this path of like semen retention. And it's actually funny. The most watched clip from this podcast so far is the one little 3-minute clip of me talking about semen retention.
It's like, it's an interesting topic.
Well, there's a lot of people that are interested in it, and there's honestly not a whole lot of good stuff, like good content about it on the internet. I find the content.
I mean, that's how you know that there's something there, right? If no one's talking about it.
Yes, I find it's not that people aren't talking about it. There's people that are doing it. It's just a lot of the same thing, and it doesn't go very deep. And I don't think there's a lot of charismatic spokespeople for the cause. If that makes sense. There's not a lot of there's not quite the vibrance of it. In that,
well, because I mean, if you're just my off the cuff thing is like because we're all sexually degenerated,
well, I think that's the thing. And
no one's really pure enough to talk about this stuff in an honest way.
Yes, I agree. I think we live in a society where it's extremely hard to do that sort of thing, and it almost seems ridiculous and impossible to most people to retain ejaculation. Like it's one thing. Because a lot of the larger side of the community is the no fap people that are it's just specifically about not using porn, right? And
is that what fap mean? I thought fap meant no masturbation at all.
Well, so the basic level that most people are using the no fap community for is just no more porn, but they're fine with masturbating outside of porn. Then there's the no masturbation at all, only sex, and that's what I think where most people are in that community. But then I think beyond that is the whole semen retention thing, and I think this kind of gets a little bit overlap with what you're talking about, at least with I feel like what your chunk of dialogue there was really about working through emotional issues and seeing what is it like you attract and what you're attracted to,
and literally people in your life will change. Events, you'll be invited to different things. Even the things that you look at online will change.
And I think that you're coming from more a perspective of reading your reality and deriving meaning from it. Like there's
no accents. Right. I don't believe in accents.
Right. And so I suppose my focus is a little more on this curiosity of being swayed all over the place, like in an uncontrollable fashion by the id or the part of you that just wants to fuck,
Yeah, I do.
And I think that we have we live in a society that does everything in its power to exploit that, because it's a very powerful force, and it's how we are getting money out of people. It's how we're getting attention out of people. It's how we're getting time out of people. It's how we are draining people of their energy until they're in their grave.
Yes.
And I think it's very difficult, like in my experience too, because I've gotten myself to 3 months multiple times. So I've experienced...
It's a good long time, man.
Yeah. And I would say I've got myself to a month a lot of times.
Yeah. The longest I've ever gone is 40 days.
Really? Okay. Yeah. So...
Maybe 44.
I found once you hit the 2-month mark, I mean, even past the first month, but 2-month, 3-month mark, that's when you start to get used to it and you feel fine. And at that point, it will have to be a conscious choice for you to go back on it.
Yeah.
To disrupt the streak.
Yeah.
And I think when I've hit...
Now, are you with a partner during this time?
No.
So you're just not doing any... The material's not coming out of you?
Right.
Okay.
Now, there has been some times I've been on a streak where I've engaged in sexual activity and did not come. Like, I just stop myself.
You can be no FAP and still have sexual intercourse with a partner, right? Isn't that part of it?
Yeah. So what I practice is specifically semen retention,
Okay.
releasing under no circumstances. You're not even under sex.
Okay.
So, if I ejaculate from sex, that's considered ending a streak in my book.
Gotcha.
Now, a lot of the no fat people, they go, no, it's not ending a streak if you do it from sex. But I'm more focused on, one, the controlling of that urge to have sex, and also, stemming from that, the urge to masturbate when you can't have sex. So that's kind of priority number one, is just the control thing. But also there's the physiological element of what not releasing your semen does to your body in terms of producing energy or freeing up the body to have a lot more energy, because it's not focused on regenerating.
I mean, stuff's happening for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I experienced these. I've done this enough to experience, like, no, this is not placebo. This is like really something going on here.
Yeah.
And
well, the material is supposedly very similar to our synovial fluid that runs up our spinal column and through our brain, right?
Oh, yeah. I've read things that are about sexual transmutation, and there being ways of non-ejaculatory orgasm for men, to where you can clench your muscles down there in a certain way when you're ejaculating to make that cerebral spinal fluid shoot up into the brain. Now, I wouldn't consider myself a practicer of that, and I'm not even trying to do that. But I mean, if anything,
you got to be really into your partner to get to that level.
Yeah.
And because your intention is going to matter, right?
Yes.
So it's not. I mean, if you're engaging in animalistic desires and just having a great time, you're not going to really be able to get into sex magic if that's like the nature of your relationship. But if you really do care and love your partner and are interested in like manifesting a reality together, I feel like that's where that stuff comes in.
Yeah, that would. I think that kind of stuff would have to come in a committed relationship where you are able to work on that. You can trust each other and have the shared interest in that. You can't be with no cum hungry whore. Some girls will be pissed that you'll never give them the.
I mean, look,
I'm
not a woman, so I don't know what it's like to receive, I mean, I know what it's like to project, but I don't know what it's like to receive. I mean, it feels pretty good to project. I would imagine it feels good to receive, but I don't know.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm at a point with experimenting with understanding I don't want to end a streak, and then trying to find my boundaries. Like, is it okay for me to release during sex under any circumstance? Like, no. There's been a number of times I've regretted it. There's been one time I didn't regret it. I felt like I loved the person, and so I do not regret. I do not regret sex with someone that I feel wholeheartedly I love.
Yeah,
and to me, that's where I found the acceptable line.
Yes.
And I think that the practice of semen retention, once you get past that first month of your hormones going all over the place and you're becoming extremely horny and attracted to shit you normally fucking wouldn't be, like you have these waves, you're like, I'll fuck anything. But if you just push past it, you just just feel it, just let it go, let it move through you. You reach a horizon where it's like it's beautiful, calm ocean, and you just feel super confident, super solid, and your ability to discern emotion, like just emotionally in general, to feel your emotions purely, it seems so much more clear and less muddled and less cloudy, and you can feel and ask yourself, am I lusting over this person? Do I love them? And that answer is very clear. And I found, like, if it's a lustful urge, no. If it's a loving urge, absolutely. This is what this is for. And so I think I guess to circle back to the conversation. That's
beautiful, by the way. I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's my practice in terms
that's
of
real stuff right there.
Yeah, of burning away all the dead wood in terms of that act of the law of attraction. You know, is getting rid of all the blinders and distractions and all the excess disruptory chemical things that are going on in people that are over-sexed or over-masturbating and engaging in this kind of thing.
But so
overstimulated, that's the word, because it's not just the sex, it's also the neurochemical cheats that we use, like the caffeine, the people agreeing with you, or not the agreeing with you thing, but
there are addictions, totally.
But the caffeine, the alcohol, the marijuana, all the things. Like I think that these things are they're non-diegetic narrative cheats that we use to get a desired neurochemical reaction in us. Yeah.
So can I ask you about your romantic life?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how...
I have none.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how challenging is it or isn't it to connect with someone when you yourself have so many facets to connect to or to connect with?
Well, you know, something I had a joke I've tried doing about this, but I think this is more true than it is a good joke. But the analogy I've come to find to be very true is that I feel like if men and women or just human beings are locks and keys in terms of the lock and key thing for men and women works. So
it's a good analogy.
Yeah, so let's just say I'm a key and the women are locks, and so and I found that a lot, like, because you look out in the world, there's so many people that are together. Most people have someone, and also when people lose someone, they can usually quickly find someone else, and
so it seems. So it appears. Yeah.
And I found that's not the case for me. I found it's really difficult for me to be with someone. You know, I've definitely experienced all sorts of unrequited, like, I love this girl, she does not at all want anything to do with me. And then I've also had plenty of girls that seem very obviously attracted to me. They're like, no, thank you.
Yep.
So I've had it both ways. It tends to be, I think as a man, it's more common to be infatuated with women that don't like you.
I think that's true, but I would also say that I have personally witnessed ladies being very interested in you.
Oh, I mean, have you?
You have those matinee good looks, and you command over a stage, man. You know.
Well, I don't know. I don't notice it so much, or maybe I'm just not paying attention.
I've seen it. Yeah.
Anyway, so I feel that most, like, regular normal people have sort of a basic key and a basic lock, and a lot of people can fit inside of one another in that way.
Yep.
Where I think I have an extremely strangely shaped key, and I fit in hardly any locks.
You're a very unique key.
All I'm saying is I have way too huge of a cock to fit in any. All the vaginas are just way too tight to me. No, I'm just kidding.
All those metal vaginas, I just can't get it in there.
Yeah. So anyway, but I mean this more from a psychological thing. It's like, I understand that as much as whatever you want to call it, uniqueness or creativity or whatever it is, there's something about me that I think on the level of romantic entanglement or a romantic relationship, I'm not for most women.
Yeah.
And I think it's just going to be hard for me to find that person. And I like what you said about, reading your reality and forming partnerships and friendships along the way, or relationships with people that lead you to your soulmate.
Yes.
Yeah. And I feel that. I feel that I'm very early on this path of actually, like, taking steps on it, and I'm probably very far away from meeting this person if it's a thing.
Well, it also depends on the scope of your life. I look at my life as going past the physical. I look at it as going into the spiritual as well. So this is just like, I don't feel like I'm racing towards anything, and like, I don't feel like I'm missing out because I'm not married with children. You know, I'm having a great time living my life in the way that I choose to. And like, that's pretty cool that other people, do different things. I look at, you know, like part of the reason why I was not interested in raising children in the realm is because I have a lot of sadness about the way that society is structured, and I have yet to get over it all. I'm in the process of getting over it.
Well, that's good.
By building something, I'm trying to build something beautiful. You know, I'm trying to turn trying to build a farm, but I feel like that reality is going to feel a lot more different. But it's also because like I'm taking responsibility and putting forth the effort to do the things that I want to do, like in the physical, you know. And that's going to attract people in my, like, new people in my life, and it already has. Like, I've met so many awesome people, like, on my farming journey, you know.
Yeah.
But I do, like, feel for you and empathize in the sense that, you know, like, hey, we have urges and desires, but at the same time, it's like, you know, you can't just connect with any old person when you view the world with the kind of depth and passion that I feel like people like we do.
Yeah. Another thing that came to mind that I think would be interesting to share with you is, so I personally don't, not that I don't believe in soulmates or that I don't think it's a thing. It's that I don't think I see the romantic field in that. That's not the lens I see it through. And I think what I've come to see it as is it goes back to, I'm sure you've heard me say a number of times in the podcast, seeing the world as a story. So to me, I think that a proper romantic bond, when it's working, it's two people sharing a story. Like you're gone from individually creating the story as a single person to you found someone that likes your story, or you like their story, or you have similar enough stories that are able to coincide with one another, and then you can start co-creating the story together. But I mean, even in a more like direct sense, it really is this story of like, you know, of course, there's neurochemical measurable things about, oh, do you love this person? Is there oxytocin in your brain around them, and how much? But yeah. I think, you know, the oxytocin, like mental illness, is more an effect of the actual cause, which is the story that I love this person. I'm in love with them. That's why there's oxytocin when I'm around them, because in my world, the character that they are in my story, I love this character. I want to be around them more. I want, every time I see their face or hear their name, oxytocin in the brain, because that excites me in my story too. If I can make my story right now, this person that's just a friend or someone I know that comes into this shop or whatever that I see once every few months or whatever, for some reason I'm in love with them. I don't know.
I can't imagine something like that ever happening.
Yeah, me neither. But if it did happen, I definitely wouldn't make a whole album about it. That's for sure.
Of course not.
So anyway, yeah, and so I think, and I also saw it this way too, like this kind of differences between, you know, typical men and women is it's why it's this usual societal construct of the man leads. I think it's usually the man that has this story of like, oh, I love this woman, so I'm going to like the whole courting and seduction process is more like getting the woman to see the beauty of the story you would have together. Okay. You're presenting a story to her.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That's what and women are very, you know, men are more physically obsessed, right? And I think they see the physical element of a beautiful woman, and that makes the story start to come up for them. And then they have to play the psychological game of seductively or in a very suave way, presenting little pieces of the story and digestible. And I don't think I do the digestible thing right. Like I think I'm way too much, way too soon, and I think that's part of my weird shaped key. Because there's
I'm similar in that sense.
There's part of me that knows like if you just dialed it back or whatever, you could probably do well. But to me, that feels manipulative. To me, it feels like I'm going to be something I'm not.
Why wouldn't you be your total self all the time?
Right. I'm going to be something I'm not in order to trick this person into thinking. But to me, I think that's the game you play if all you want to do is just have sex with the person.
Correct.
But like, if you're on this path to try to present someone with who you truly are and what the way you think and what your personality really is, that's why it's like, yeah, go ahead and make a move and send this person a whole song you made about them, even though you've never hung out before, because it's a fucking crazy thing to do. But it's very me. And if she responds to it and she likes that, then that's a really good sign that she's already this early on accepting me for this fucking wild thing that I am. And I really like this idea of a shared story, and
yeah, and you know, this, like what you're talking about, this living and expressing yourself very passionately, like that is what I envision in whatever kind of relationship I end up in, regardless of it. Because to me, when I look around at like people just out and about and like people in my network and stuff, I see a lot of dull, like not like dim, like not a lot of energy flow, you know? People, older people, they stay in these relationships that they're not totally comfortable with, and it wears them down. And, you know, like I came from a culture, I'm from the Northeast. I came from a culture where there's like very regular behavior for like men to talk shit on their wives. And I would just say that that's really just horrible behavior. Like I want to be totally into my partner. Yeah, it's a very sad thing to observe that like most relationships aren't good. And that they're, but because that's our models. Like we learn from this.
Yes.
You know?
But it is very rare to find those two, like a couple that's like, oh no, these people are in love, and you feel it, and like you want them to be together. You're like, I love being around the two of you because it's really admirable. I like feel the true love the two of you share. But it's also insane, like, you know, in some of those cases you can feel that, and you know, one of them either always has been or winds up like being corrupted by this sort of like hypersexualized society because they're not properly psychologically protected against it. You know what I mean?
Well,
like,
I do.
Saying,
and I think
even when people are truly soulmates and in love, this insidious devil-like abstract entity that is our hypersexualized society. You know, you show the committed husband who's really in love. You show him enough Instagram fat asses, you know, he'll start to get one too many boners.
Were you gonna say fat dicks? I think you started. You show those married men all those fat dicks on Instagram.
Yeah, that's what it was. No. I was about to say something else, but
no, you love a good fat booty. I know you do.
Not me, heavens no. I hate them.
You haven't written many songs about them or anything.
Michael, my songs are satire. There's nothing true from the heart about them.
So you were saying, yes, Instagram corrupts us, right?
Well, it's not just Instagram, but I'm just saying that's a microcosm of this larger thing where it's, you know.
Well, what if there's a reality where you don't even feel that desire? See, this is where
this is what I mean.
That's why I want to explore.
Yeah, well, I think that this is what you're pointing to when you say moving through the emotional journey that is necessary, and what I say about psychological preparation. You know, it's like if you've done that kind of work, you're not so susceptible to the corruption, where like you could be some bumbling idiot who actually does happen to stumble into your soulmate, and you end up in there. But if you haven't done the individual work, the two of you, either one of you are prone to that thing falling apart because you can easily be corrupted by the world around you.
I think it's very possible, and I think oftentimes likely, that people do meet their soulmates early in their lives, and even sometimes maybe even be in relationships with them, and then part ways, and then they don't come back together until the next life. And think about this, like if everyone really had a soulmate, like again, you know, if you suspend your own belief and just intellectually entertain the argument, you know, people die every day. We were talking about abortions earlier. I mean, that would mean that those people have soulmates, right? People are in jail. That means they would have soulmates.
It's just funny to think about fetuses having soulmates.
Well, if you think that there's more going on than just this physical reality, then, you know, there's probably a good chance that, you know, you may encounter those beings. In whatever nature. Here's one. How about this, right? What if we're encased in some kind of thing, right? Where no one can leave, right? And like all of the spirits of all of the aborted fetuses. Ready?
Oh boy.
You have permission to use this, by the way. Group themselves together based upon their own characteristics and manifest themselves as alien races.
Alien fetuses.
The reptilians might be aborted fetuses.
Wow.
The Pleiadians might be aborted fetuses.
Well, I'll say one thing that to echo the words of Michael Phipps. This place is wild. You never know.
It's a mystical realm disguised as a mundane reality.
Yeah. I'll drink to that. Some water. Cheers.
Cheers.
Brother, I've really enjoyed this conversation.
It's been my pleasure.
Yeah, this has been such a fun one.
Thank you for having me, and hopefully you'll have me back. There's many more things to discuss.
Oh, absolutely.
And congratulations on you manifesting your reality. And, you know, as they say that the trope about teaching or really doing any activity is that you learn more about the thing in the first few years by putting yourself out there. You know, the teacher learns more than the student. So I'm excited for you about all the conversations that you're going to be having with many interesting people and contributing to the various creative characters and cool goings-ons here in our little city of Wilmington.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And I appreciate you being so supportive of me and my stuff and being my friend, man.
That's great. I love you, man.
I love you too.
Love and peace.
Love and peace.